evolution by means of natural adaptation, the role of epigenetic in phenotypic differentiation. So here we have two mechanisms of evolution. The Lamarckian model for evolution that states that the use and disuse of part of the body, organs, will develop this part of the organism, and this change will transmit it to the next generations. So you have here the classical example of the giraffes that to reach the leaves high to the tree, they develop the neck, and this trait differentiation is transmitted to the next generation. Now the Darwinian model, you have a variability among the population. You have 3 different giraffes, and only the giraffe that has favorable trait will survive. So you will have evolution by natural selection. Some individuals will not fit, will not adapt to the environment, and will not transmit the trait to the next generation. Today, with the field of science called epigenetic, the Lamarckian model is being discussed. Again, it's validating all the Lamarckian model, the epigenetic mechanisms. So initially, we have the central dogma of biology, and the central dogma states that the information flow from the DNA sequence and to a protein, to phenotype, and the DNA has all the information of the structure of our body and other organisms. Now, with the study of epigenetic that initiated in the decade of 1970, you have the more information about how the DNA works. And the epigenetic information also plays an important role in the transmission of traits. The influence is so profound that methylation, it was found that methylation can cause mutation. And this mutation can be passed to the next generation over the next generations. You have patterns of CPG islands where the cytosine in the DNA has changed to thiamine, and here you have a strong evidence that epigenetic is transmitted to many and many generations. The epigenetic mechanisms. So you have here DNA, and you have the histone protein that will package the DNA. So it's a mechanism where you have activation or disactivation or silencing. The activation or silencing of a region of the DNA. So you have here the types of cell, and each type of cell for our organism has the same DNA sequence, but the activation and silencing of determined genes will give information to you build a cell body that's specific from each part of our body. You have it here the example of epiderm, red blood cell, neuron, and muscle cells. So every cell of our body has the same sequence of DNA, but only one part is activated and other parts are silenced. And also, as we talked a little earlier, the epigenetic heritability. You have here in the phase of our development some extent of time, you have the reprogramming of epigenetic patterns, and this is a cycle that is passed from generation to generation. So you have here traits that can be passed, and these patterns of methylation of each individual has a pattern of methylation, will pass to the next generation. You see here that this transmission of traits with epigenetic mechanisms is influenced by the environment. So you have an example here of diet. These two gentlemen, Robert and Randy, gave different diets to different groups of female mice, and the offspring, each individual, were born with different traits. You have extreme difference in fur color, body weight, and even risk for chronic diseases. So you see here, as you can see, the influence of environments like diet in the differentiation of traits from generation to generation. So you have strong evidence with new studies. Other studies shows that the pregnant rats exposed to vinclozolin show poor fertility to the offspring, the next generation. And here you have great grandsons, third generation with low sperm count, because of the chemical exposure that the generation F0 has. And this trait differentiation is passed to the next generation. So another example of environmental influence on the differentiation of trait. You have even human cases. There are many studies indicated that smoking, stress, and diet can alter the DNA patterns of methylation, and this is passed to the offspring. During starvation, many genes are activated and others are silenced, which can affect the offspring phenotype. You have the example here of Great Depression in the United States that changed methylation pattern that affected children and grandchildren, and the Dutch famine occurred in the end of World War II. They found people that born during a period were smaller than the average. And so you have even registered human cases of epigenetic influence on the trait differentiation influenced by the environment. So you have many studies and confirming that the epigenetic inheritance is a mechanism that influence evolution of the individual, of the species. And even Darwin, as we're gonna see here, has predicted this, has predicted that evolution can occur by another mechanism that's not natural selection. Let's see it. Here's a quote from Darwin. How then can we explain these several facts in embryology, namely the very general thought, not universal, difference in structure between the embryo and the adult, the various parts in the same individual embryo which ultimately become very unlike and serve for diverse purpose, being at an early period of growth alike. The common but not invariable resemblance between embryos or larvae of the most distinct species in the same class, the embryo often remaining while within the egg or womb structure, which are of no service to it, either at or later period of life. On the other hand, larvae which have provided for their own wants, being perfectly adapted to the surrounding condition. So Darwin, recognizing that the development of an embryo is influenced by the surrounding condition. Another quote from Darwin. On the theory of natural selection, we can to certain extent answer this question. We need not here consider how the bodies of some animals first became divided into a series of segments, or how they became divided into right and left sides, with corresponding organs. For such questions are almost beyond investigation. So he is recognizing that this kind of phenotypic differentiation is under investigation. It is, however, probable that some serial structure are the result of cell multiplied by division, entailing the multiplication of the parts developed from such cells. So again, he is assuming that structures can develop, can differentiate, and not from natural selection. On the whole, I think we may conclude that habit, use, and the use have in some cases played a considerable part in the modification, and here a considerable part in the modification of the constitution and of the structure of various organs, but that the effect of use and disuse have often been largely combined with and sometimes overmastered by the natural selection of innate difference. You have here, he's recognizing the use and disuse. The use is and the disuse is part of the Lamarckian model of evolution. The use and disuse and the transmission of acquired characters. So the use and disuse is mechanism always that is also recognized by Charles Darwin. Some authors use the term variation in technical sense as implying a modification directly due to physical conditions of life, and variation in this sense are supposed not to be inherited. So this variation that's acquired during the lifetime of the organism. But who can say that the dwarfed condition of shells in the brackish waters of Baltic, or dwarfed plants on an alpine summit, or the thicker fur of an animal from far northwards, would not in some cases be inherited for at least for some generations? And in this case, I presume that form would be called variety. Here he's calling the trait differentiation as variety. And he's recognizing that some traits are passed to the next generations. Some traits that's modified by the environmental conditions. Variability is governed by many unknown laws, more especially by that correlation of growth. Here he's returning again about the embryonic development. Something may be attributed to the direct action of the conditions of life. Here he's referring to again the environmental conditions. Something must be attributed to use and disuse. Again, he's recognizing this mechanism of use and disuse, and this is contributing to the evolution of an organism. So you see here that Darwin is recognizing that another mechanism of evolution that's not natural selection exists, and it's visible, it's observable in animals, in example of organisms. So the evolution controlled by epigenetic mechanisms can happen at the same time with natural selection, which acts at a population level. So natural selection will select the most fittest organisms, most adapted organisms. On the other hand, natural adaptation will contribute to the phenotypic differentiation of individuals. The fittest organisms that survive the process of natural selection can also have some differentiated traits transmitted to the offspring by epigenetic mechanisms, allowing a natural adaptation process acting on the individual. Here you have natural selection acting at population level, and natural adaptation at individual level. The individual will change, will differentiate some traits that can be passed to the next generation. So you have here the reference that I used, and you have an ebook about. The name of the book is Evolution by Means of Natural Adaptation. You can email me and I'll send you the book. Thank you very much, and we see you next time.